Okay, we're going to go over a few different ways that you can perform a ridge split. First, just for anyone who's not aware, a ridge split is sort of autograft, a way to take the existing bone, make a split or a slit in the middle of the bone, and expand the bone out to create maybe 6 millimeters of ridge when there are only 3 millimeters there to begin with. The good indications for a ridge split are a bony defect where there's a nice wide base, but it comes to a knife edge or point up higher. Bad candidates for a ridge split is like an hourglass shaped, where the bone is thin all the way down or gets thinner down below. And then in my experience, I've had a lot better luck in the maxilla than the mandible. Obviously, this is a mandibular model, so that's the one we have to work with. But just due to the D3, D4 bone in my hands, seems to work a lot better. I've done splits in the mandible where everything seems to go well, but just due to, I believe, the lack of blood supply, they'll get quite a bit of bone dieback and not as predictable in my hands. And then, there are ways to mitigate that as far as doing the split and the release is also splitting apically, closing and coming back. Problem with that is you create a two surgery event. Anyhow, just some thoughts on indications for ridge split. Now let's look at ways to accomplish it. So once you create the split, there's a couple of ways to spread or open the ridge. The traditional way is with a chisel, which obviously is pretty straightforward. Downsides, obviously people don't like to be hammered on, and then also it's a little less feeling of control doing it that way. A little bit better, in my opinion, is to use an osteotome, tapered osteotome like this, where as you work the osteotome down, almost like a screwdriver into the split, you'll get the spread that way. Again, not a great deal of control with that, and depending on the bone density, may or may not need the mallet as well. A modification of the tapered osteotome is a tapered rotary osteotome, which actually go in either your implant motor or just a implant ratchet driver. And as you engage those threads and engage into the split, it'll split or spread out that way. This is probably my favorite way to do it, just because there's a high degree of control. You can do a quarter turn and open it up little by little. And if I'm doing multiple implants in one split, I'll place this on the one end, hold things steady, and then I can prepare my osteotomy on the other implant, get that placed, and almost use it like a door stop to keep the ridge open while I'm working. In a pinch, if you don't have one of these and you're placing a tapered implant, you can use the implant as a rotary osteotome in effect itself. My caution here is just make sure you're watching your torque values. You don't want to sink it in with 80 Newton centimeters of torque and then get crestal bone loss because you necrose the bone by doing so. So that works well, and just the implant itself works pretty well, and really soft bone. In those instances, a lot of times you can just place the implant, and you'll get some of that spread effect anyway. Now there are advocates of using the Versa drill or osteodensification burrs to try to ridge split or expand the bone. I think they have a great place, and that's for internal sinus lifts. Outside of that, I haven't had good luck with them. Mandible is way too hard to get any sort of actual ridge expansion in my hands, and in the maxilla, I just think there are better ways. Again, it does a great job forcing the bone apically up to do a sinus bump, but I haven't had great success with getting a lateral augmentation using the Versa osteodensification burrs. So let's go ahead and do a simulated surgery here on the model. Alright, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll be using a piezo to make the split. In real life, using a carbide surgical high-speed handpiece with a thin carbide or a thin diamond works just as well. And in my hands is a little bit faster. So the only really advantage to the piezo, in my opinion, is just the safety, not speed. So, but that's what we have here, so that's what we'll use. So I'm going to go ahead and start making a split here. With the piezo, you want to always keep it moving so you don't overheat anything. Obviously, you would have a water coolant if this was the real deal. So the longer your split is, the less necessary releasing incisions are, at least in the maxilla. In the mandible, that in my experience, they're always needed. So we're just gonna split here. And I'm gonna make an extended split so we can kind of explore a couple of the different ways that we could expand this ridge. So you'll want to come, whether you're in the mandible or the maxilla, you'll want to come at least through the cortical plate to the medullary bone. In the mandible, I find it necessary to really take that split down quite a ways just to get the so you don't get a green stick fracture. Okay, and then especially the one-tooth splitter, a narrow space, you're going to always want to do these releases. And unlike a soft tissue flap, you just want to pull them straight down. You don't want to necessarily spread out apically. So just bring it straight down. Make sure it's connected on the cortical portion. And then we've obviously got the mental foramen right there, so you don't want to be into there, but you can come just shy of it here a little bit just to, again, help direct that split. Okay, so now that we've got our split started here, let's go ahead and look at different ways to open it up. First technique is, like I said, just the traditional chisel. So you can grab a chisel and just tap it in there, work it out, work it down, spread it. I just don't like the feel of it. You know, it's one of those deals where fine, and then slips or breaks. So I never use a chisel for this. All right, and then you have the everything else that we use is round to try to open the ridge. And I mean, you can try to get in there, not very effective. So what I like to do is figure out where I want my implants and then use that to help anchor and guide me. So I'll move over to my implant handpiece, and I like to use the Lindemann style pointed pilot because it's real precise, doesn't walk around on you, and really minimal bone removal to get a good purchase. So let's say I wanted my implant about here. I'll go ahead and take this down just like I was doing a normal osteotomy here. So I got my hole started there, and you can see it's just hardly taking any more than the ridge split. And then from there you can start working through the options. So we take our normal osteotome, and this works usually a lot better in the maxilla. And this bone on this model is soft like a D3, D4 bone. So you can see with just some rocking and some apical pressure, I'm able to work that down in And you can see that split starting to open up a little bit there. So that certainly is a valid technique, and then you'll just move up through your different sizes, bigger and bigger, to continue to open that. Now this is just like extracting a tooth. You want to expand the bone slowly. If you just jam it home right away, of course you're gonna fracture the plate or do some damage. So again, as we're working it down, you can see that split's starting to open up. So that's one way to accomplish it. Again, usually not my preferred method. I usually prefer the rotary. So let's go ahead and look at that. So you can set it up a couple of ways. You can use a ratchet. My preferred way is I'll get it started by hand, and then I'll actually reach for a straight driver that I use to place my implants. Let me grab that. You see this has the square hex in the bottom, and it's essentially an implant screwdriver for a simpleton like me. So take that and it will engage right into the top of that. And the reason I like this is essentially it becomes just like that osteotome I was holding, except now I have the rotary component. So I've got a lot more control. And when I start feeling some stronger resistance, I'll just sit there and let it expand, give it a quarter turn, wait, let it expand, give it another quarter turn, and so on. And then as you look down, now this model isn't behaving quite like a real bone would. It's more just smashing around where I'm at, but when you're in the mouth doing this, you'll see the plate actually expand out. So we can go ahead and size up and see if we can get any more spread on the model here. So as you're going to the next size, it'll go down easy, and then you'll hit that point of resistance, and again you just start slowing up. And then this is where, if I'm doing multiple implants, you can see we're starting to get a little bit of split there. But if I was doing multiple implants at this point, I'm just going to leave that one alone. Come back to my implant osteotomy here and say, okay, the other one I want to put about right here, just safely away from the dental foramen there. So same thing, I'll go ahead and get my little pilot hole started there. And then with my rotary osteotome sitting in the other osteotomy, I'll come back to my starter one, my smaller one here. Get that set up. Then I'll just come next door here. Same thing, just start putting it down. And then as I start to meet that resistance, just slow up, and when I'm feeling the resistance over there on the neighbor, then usually the other one will loosen up a little. And then you can walk it back and forth, turn there, turn here, just kind of walk it back and forth between the two. And then you can see even on this plastic model, we're starting to get a pretty decent split there. So from there you can continue to size up as needed until you get the amount of bone that you need. So I'm going to swap out this smaller one for a little bigger one, just to see if we can get a little bit more split than we have already. this one and get it started here. So you need a little bit of resistance there. So as I bring it down into there again, okay, I'm starting to feel the resistance there. I'll come back to this guy. I can work him back and forth, again to get to where I need to be. And then at that point, that's probably a pretty typical split that I'm looking at. If you can gain, 2, maybe 3 millimeters of split there, that's usually all you need. And you can see now the importance of having plenty of bone on the apical portion there. Because if this was undercut, of course, you would just kind of split that whole thing off and be in a bad place. So from here, what I like to do is I'll come and figure out, just strategically which one I think is going to hold the split open better, and I'll pick the other one and go ahead and take that one out. And especially if you do have if the bone's really soft from here, you can probably just go ahead and place your implant. If it's not, and you're worried about putting too much pressure on there, what you can actually do is go ahead and size up with your implant kit at this point. So I'm going to reach over here. I just put on my tapered drill that matches my kit. There's the implant that I'm going to place. And then go ahead and you can see, just without even drilling, pushing it down in there, I'm pretty much already there. Now this is one size down from the implant I'm going to place, but you go ahead and run it through there. You can see that's not even cutting. That one slips just a little bit, slips right in and right out. So from there, I'll go ahead and size up to my final size. And again, if the bone's soft on my final, I like to undersize it just a little. So you think with a tapered drill, I just come up a couple millimeters short of my final length. But this bone's nice and hard here, so we'll just take it to depth. So then you see we've got our full-size osteotomy there, and really got pretty good bone surrounding. All right, so we've still got our other rotary osteotome in there holding the split open, and then we've got our implant on the square driver picked up in the screwdriver style straight implant driver. Now again, you can place as normal with your hand ratchet or with the implant motor, but when I'm doing a split, I like the tactile feedback to know exactly what I've got going on. You see, as we place that, it just goes right in and feels to be about 35-40 Newton centimeters. We could test it and see. But then you can see, essentially, it drops right in there. We've expanded the ridge 2 to 3 millimeters. So at this point now, that implant becomes the stop, again, to hold our split where we need it or want it. So at this point, then we can go back, remove this one, that should do a pretty good job of holding things. Yeah, so our split's still pretty much held open there. So at this point, and as you know, the bone is elastic to a point of deformation, and then at that point it'll kind of hold itself where it's been expanded to. So we'll just come here again probably go straight to the final drill, because our last one, the size down didn't do anything. So just go ahead and, again, just drops right in. Got our final osteotomy. And from there, you go ahead and place the other implant. And that's really about it. Grafting, not really necessary unless it's, you're really concerned about the aesthetics. Just like an extraction site will fill in as long as you get a clean flap closure, tension-free closure. I wouldn't really worry about it. This is one of the rare cases where I don't go straight to healing abutments. I do like to put cover screws on and cover it. Tar nails, thing one miracle at a time. Just one less thing to worry about. If you are concerned about aesthetics, obviously go ahead and graft. Sticky bone, PRF, everything to make sure you get a nice result. And that's about it.